Man, what's the creepiest thing a woman has ever said or done to you? This chilling experience happened to me just last year. There was this girl I used to work with, and we had been talking on and off for a few years. Looking back, the relationship was an absolute minefield of endless red flags. I should have turned around and ran the very first day. Red flag number one was completely unhinged. Out of nowhere, she looked me dead in the eye and demanded that I get her pregnant. I immediately laughed it off and told her no way. Her face went completely blank. She told me it could be done the easy way or the hard way. She then aggressively threatened to assault me violently just to get what she wanted. I am mixed with Black and Native American, and I have long, thick, distinct hair. She openly admitted she was obsessed with my genetics and wanted a baby that looked exactly like me, no matter the cost. Red flag number two happened around my birthday. She nicely offered to cook dinner for me. I thought it was a sweet gesture, so I agreed. But when I asked what was on the menu, my stomach dropped. She was preparing a massive feast made entirely out of seafood. She knew for a fact that I have a severe, life-threatening allergy to it. I obviously canceled the dinner and stayed home. She became absolutely furious. When I confronted her, she casually smiled and said she already knew I was allergic, but she just wanted to see how allergic I actually was. She wanted to test if my throat would close up. Red flag number three was the final straw. She tried to convince me that she would end my life. One afternoon, she called me repeatedly while I was completely slammed at work. I couldn't answer my phone. When I finally called her back, she was screaming. She claimed she knew I was sleeping with another woman. Then, she dropped a line that made my blood run cold. She said, "You belong to me. Your body is mine. You need to answer my calls on the very first ring, or I will literally murder you." For a long time, I foolishly thought she was just talking tough and was ultimately harmless. But after the food incident and the death threats, reality finally hit me. The adrenaline and fear kicked in. I realized I was dealing with a monster. I quietly packed up my things, moved to a completely different area, and changed my phone number permanently. Cultural note. In criminal psychology, the behavior of testing a victim's known severe medical allergy is classified as an intentional poisoning attempt. In the United States, knowingly exposing an individual to a severe allergen with the intent to observe a physical reaction can be prosecuted as aggravated assault or attempted murder, showcasing an extreme level of antisocial personality traits and a complete lack of empathy. I was 17 and a senior in high school when I started dating this girl. She was a junior, a grade below me. The relationship didn't last long, and I eventually broke it off because she started demanding some absolutely crazy, unrealistic stuff. To be honest, I don't even remember the exact details of what she wanted. My brain completely blocked it out, because what she did after the breakup is what stuck with me forever. Around that same time, my group of friends and I went through this stupid teenage phase. We would constantly mess with each other's cars. We used window paint, disconnected batteries, or just pulled random harmless pranks. It was just dumb high school fun. Well, one morning I walk out of my house and my jaw drops. There is highly offensive, incredibly explicit graffiti painted all over my car. It was completely covered in vulgar, borderline illegal drawings. Naturally, I thought it was my crew. I immediately texted the group chat and asked who did it. Nobody confessed. The very next day, I finished my shift at work, walk out to the parking lot, and there it is again. The exact same disturbing, vulgar drawings covering my windows. The third time it happened, things got genuinely creepy. I was actually sitting inside a restaurant with all the prime suspects. My entire friend group was at the table, and not a single person had stepped outside for hours. Yet, when we walked out to the parking lot, my car had been targeted again. This psychological nightmare went on for about another month. I was losing my mind, constantly looking over my shoulder. We had been broken up for almost 2 months at this point, so honestly, she never even crossed my mind as a suspect. Finally, my neighbor pulled me aside. He told me he kept seeing a specific red car parking near my house at weird hours. He said it was a girl. The pieces instantly fell together. I managed to track down her mother's phone number. I called her directly and made it very clear that I was going to press full vandalism and stalking charges if her daughter didn't stop immediately. That finally ended it. The reality is terrifying. My ex-girlfriend literally followed me everywhere, tracking my routine for a solid month, just to deface my car. Cultural note: targeted stalking and repetitive property vandalism following a breakup often manifest as a mechanism of psychological control. By repeatedly damaging the victim's vehicle in everyday environments such as their home, workplace, or leisure spots, the aggressor does not intend to destroy the object itself. Instead, they seek to shatter the victim's sense of security, sending an implicit and disturbing message that they are being watched in real time. When I was 16 years old, I went out one weekend with a group of acquaintances I normally wouldn't hang out with. During that night, I met this girl. We kind of hit it off casually, so I asked for her phone number. Just 3 days later, she suddenly shows up at my part-time job. It was incredibly weird. I knew for a fact that I had never told her where I worked. She actually waited over an hour in the lobby just for me to go on my official break. All of that effort, just so she could force herself to sit with me for a brief 15 minutes. Right then, my survival instincts kicked in. I immediately chose not to make any future plans with her. I could already tell I wasn't interested, and her energy was just way too intense. The following Saturday, the paranoia escalated. I was out in front of my parents' house working on my bike with my friends. Suddenly, a car comes creeping down our street. It was a strict cul-de-sac, a dead end. On the first slow pass, I noticed a girl I used to go to school with was driving. On the second slow pass, the vehicle turned around. The passenger window was now facing my side, and I saw the intense girl staring right at me. Apparently, the two of them knew each other. The psycho had specifically tracked down this girl from my school just to ask if she knew exactly where I lived. She wanted to scope out my house, and she definitely didn't expect me to be standing outside. Now my disinterest turned into genuine fear. Keep in mind, these were the days long before social media existed. For her to figure out my exact workplace, and then manually find a mutual acquaintance who knew my physical address just to track me down, that took a terrifying, concerning amount of real-world effort. She wasn't even from my town. She literally had to cold call multiple girls she knew from my area, until she finally landed on one who happened to be childhood friends with the girl living right next door to me. It was pure investigative stalking. Eventually, her hanging around my workplace became a daily occurrence. It was suffocating. And while she was there, she started heavily flirting with my close friend, Steve. She openly told me to my face that she was going to date Steve just to make me jealous. I calmly explained that manipulating my friends wouldn't make me jealous at all. It would just make me despise her even more. But she proceeded with a twisted plan anyway. I finally pulled Steve aside in private and warned him about her exact words. But Steve just shrugged it off and said he didn't care. Steve was a pretty lonely, isolated guy. To him, a fake relationship born out of a toxic effort to make me jealous was still better than having nobody at all. But Steve was also incredibly immature, hot-headed, and drank way too much. Eventually, her desire to manipulate me via Steve evolved into something much worse. She realized it was highly entertaining to wind Steve up, feed his jealousy, and point his aggression in the direction of random guys at parties. Almost every single weekend they would go out. She would deliberately get overly flirty with some random stranger right in front of him, and Steve would drink enough to do something incredibly stupid and violent. After a consecutive streak of nights spent in a local drunk tank and multiple stressful trips to court, the two of them finally broke up for good. Thankfully, neither of those toxic individuals are part of my life anymore. Cultural note. In the era before social media and smartphones, tracking an individual's routine required a highly conscious and methodical psychological process known as proximity seeking. Stalkers in the 90s and early 2000s relied heavily on social engineering, manipulating casual acquaintances through phone trees and geographic proximity to breach privacy, making the invasion feel significantly more calculated and intrusive than modern digital cyberstalking. I was 22 years old at the time, and I had just started dating this 19-year-old girl. Outwardly, she always acted like a typical, slightly ditzy and cheerful person. But during our second official date, her entire personality did a complete 180-degree turn that absolutely terrified me. Without any warning or discussion, she suddenly became incredibly aggressive. She started pinching me, hitting my arms, and pushing me around with intense force. She was deliberately trying to provoke a violent physical reaction out of me. I was completely stunned. My body froze as my brain tried to process what was happening. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled, immediately backing away and putting an end to everything. Instead of apologizing, she got extremely upset and defensive. The entire situation was deeply unnerving. She lacked basic maturity, and any shred of trust I had for her vanished in that exact second. It was awkward, sure, but my main concern was far more serious. She clearly lacked judgment. I kept thinking, what if she ends up with bruises from her own reckless behavior, and then everyone assumes I was the one responsible? As her boyfriend, I knew I would be in massive legal trouble instantly. My gut told me to run, so I dropped her right then and there. I broke off all contact. And my instincts were completely right. The moment I ended things, she went straight to my entire friend group and started spreading vicious rumors, claiming that I had been abusive and rough with her. The adrenaline and anxiety hit me hard when my friends brought it up. Luckily for me, she had always acted a little off and unstable around them in the past. Nobody believed her twisted story, and they saw right through her lies. But the sheer ease with which she tried to destroy my life is something that still gives me chills. Cultural note. In modern dating psychology, a sudden and unconsented escalation into physical aggression to provoke a partner is considered a severe behavioral red flag. In the United States, false accusations of domestic abuse within college-aged or young adult social circles can result in catastrophic legal consequences, social ostracization, and permanent damage to a person's clean record, even before any formal investigation takes place. I was a high school student when this happened. I was just minding my own business during PE class when this quiet, strange girl suddenly approached me out of nowhere. She stared directly into my eyes and asked me a deeply personal, uncomfortable question. She asked if I was a virgin. I was pretty young and socially awkward, so I sheepishly confessed that I was. I expected her to laugh or walk away. Instead, her next words sent a literal shiver down my spine. "Can I have some of your blood?" I was completely taken aback. My brain short-circuited. I nervously laughed and asked her why on earth she would want that. What she said next was absolutely wild. She looked at me with a completely blank, deadpan expression and said, "Because I am painting my room with the blood of virgins." Cue the most horrific, awkward silence of my entire life. This girl wasn't joking. She was being dead serious. I asked her how she even planned to get my blood. She didn't hesitate. She told me to meet her behind the bleachers right after class. Against my better judgment, I had this morbid curiosity. I actually met up with her. But the moment I arrived, my stomach dropped. She pulled out professional syringes, medical gloves, a whole extraction kit. The reality hit me hard. I immediately backed out, raising my hands and yelling, "No way! What the hell is wrong with you?" Later that school year, karma played a cruel joke on me. We were randomly placed in the exact same group project. I had to work with her to pass the class. She eventually invited me over to her house to finish the assignment. By this point, months had passed, and I had sort of forgotten about the whole blood incident. I thought she had just gone through a weird, edgy phase. But the moment I stepped inside her house, my nostrils were hit by something absolutely rancid. It was an overwhelming, sickening odor. I couldn't place it at first, so I tried to blame it on the clearly dilapidated, unkempt state of the house. The place was messy, crowded, and filthy. Until we finally got to her bedroom. The moment she opened that door, the smell hit me like a physical wall. It was the unmistakable metallic stench of rotting iron and death. I looked up and saw a massive patch on one of her walls. It was heavily stained in this really ugly, crusty, reddish-brown color. My heart completely stopped. Every single word she told me during PE class was 100% true. She was actually collecting fluid from people to cover her walls. The sheer panic activated my fight-or-flight response. I booked it out of that house so fast, I probably broke a school running record, and I never ever looked back. Cultural note. In American alternative and dark subcultures of the late 90s and 2000s, certain extreme fringe groups of the goth, or vampire movements engaged in highly dangerous practices involving bodily fluids to achieve a specific aesthetic. School administrations and school resource officers, SROs, treat the possession of medical syringes by students and unauthorized blood extraction on school grounds as severe biohazard violations and potential psychological emergencies, often resulting in immediate psychiatric evaluation or heavy legal intervention. Like what you see? Subscribe to the Reddit Oracle for more. It is honestly a toss-up between two completely unhinged women. The first one falsely accused me of assault out of nowhere. The logic? I had completely disappeared from her radar. The reality was that she had been aggressively stalking me for months, and I finally escaped by joining the military. She couldn't handle losing control, so she took the entire lie to court. The lawyers, the police, and even her own family believed every single word of her twisted story. I was facing a total nightmare. That was until my closest friend testified in front of the judge. He proved I was active duty, stationed several states away, with an entire platoon of witnesses to back me up. The case collapsed instantly, but that was just the beginning of my run-ins with absolute crazy. The second woman told me straight to my face, "If I can't have you, then no one will." This happened the exact moment I broke up with her. I thought it was just dramatic venting. I was dead wrong. A few weeks later, she somehow sneaked past security at the army base. She bypassed the CQ desk entirely and started banging furiously on my barracks door. The adrenaline hit me hard. In a military environment, a breach like that is terrifying. She could have had a knife, a gourd, worse. I immediately called the military police, but she was in great physical shape, panicked, and managed to sprint back to her car before they swarmed the area. About a month later, the psycho spotted me while I was rollerblading down a quiet road. I heard tires screeching behind me. I turned around just in time to see her floor the gas pedal, aiming her car directly at my back. I barely managed to dive into a ditch. But honestly, my army friend's story is 100 times worse. He was seeing a girl who claimed she had a severe allergy to spermicide lubricant inside condoms. Because of that, he used regular ones, tied them off carefully, and threw them in her bedroom trash can after they were done. Months later, she slapped him with a paternity test. He was the biological father. He was completely devastated and eventually left the military. He called me recently to give me the sickening update. She had finally confessed to how it actually happened. Every single time they had sex, she waited for him to fall asleep or leave. Then she went through the trash, cut open the discarded condoms, and manually inseminated herself with the fluid. She knew his deepest psychological weakness. He had told her before that his own father abandoned him, and that he would never, under any circumstances, do that to his own child. She weaponized his trauma just to trap him forever. Cultural note: in the United States military, the CQ desk stands for Charge of Quarters. This is a designated desk located at the main entrance of a barracks building, manned 24/7 by service members on duty. In the field of forensic psychology and family law, reproductive sabotage and the forced extraction of biological material are classified as extreme forms of abuse and coercive control. Although these cases have historically been difficult to litigate, modern jurisprudence in several countries already penalizes them under charges of fraud, assault, and violation of bodily autonomy due to the severe premeditated psychological and economic harm inflicted upon the victim. I was out at a crowded club with my friends having a great time. There was this Portuguese girl there that I was massively crushing on. The feeling was completely mutual, but we were both being awkward morons about it. We made each other laugh effortlessly. The chemistry between us was just amazing. But there was a dark cloud over the night. This tall, chubby Irish girl had been aggressively hitting on me for hours. I kept throwing out clear boundaries, but she refused to back off. She literally waited until I was completely wasted and vulnerable. The alcohol was hitting me hard, and I needed to use the restroom. She quietly stalked me. She followed me straight into the unisex bathroom, stepped right inside the toilet stall behind me, and locked the door. Apparently, basic English words like no and not interested are not understood by everyone. I was trapped inside that stall, completely disoriented, while she cornered me and forced herself on me. But honestly, the fact that she violated my boundaries like that wasn't even the worst part of the nightmare. The worst part came afterward. I went straight to my crush, the girl I was head over heels in love with. I was shaken up, trying to explain that I was drunk, that I kept telling the other girl no, and that I had been targeted. She looked me dead in the eye and cold-bloodedly told me that I was a fake, a fuckboy bastard, and that I was probably secretly enjoying it. The psychological shift was instant. Her and her entire friend group immediately started treating me like an absolute war criminal. All of them, no exceptions. I was completely ostracized from the entire social circle overnight. To make the psychological torture even worse, my crush went completely out of her way to rub the next guy she started dating directly into my face. She wanted to break me. My coping mechanism was toxic. I countered the pain by hooking up with absolutely anyone willing and available, just to numb the betrayal and distract my brain from the reality of what happened. It was a complete disaster. Cultural note: in night entertainment venues, the implementation of unisex bathrooms has inadvertently created high-risk zones for predatory behavior due to the lack of gender-segregated monitoring. Furthermore, male victims of non-consensual physical cornering often face a severe psychological phenomenon known as secondary victimization, where social groups dismiss the trauma and shift the blame onto the victim due to societal double standards regarding male vulnerability. I was about 18 years old at the time, and I was in a serious relationship with my girlfriend. She was often busy and wasn't always around. Because of that, I was constantly worried about acting too needy or bothering her too much with my constant messages. To give her some space and clear my head, I started hopping onto text chats on Omegle. It was just a harmless way to talk to random people and pass the time so my neediness wouldn't become too obvious. One night, I get connected with this girl. We start typing back and forth, and she honestly seemed cool. She was genuinely nice, polite, and easy to talk to. After a while, the conversation was flowing so well that I decided to give her my Tumblr handle so we could keep in touch. But the exact second she clicked on my profile and saw what I actually looked like, the entire dynamic shifted into pure creepiness. It was like she flipped a mental switch. The sweet, nice girl I had been chatting with for the past hour completely vanished, and a totally different person took her place. She immediately tried to aggressively seduce me. Without warning, she started flooding my screen with highly explicit, unsolicited photographs that I did not want or ask for. I was completely stunned, staring at my monitor in the dark. I typed back immediately, telling her to stop and making it clear that I had a girlfriend, but she completely refused to take no for an answer. She wouldn't relent. Then, she typed out something that made my stomach turn. She explicitly told me that she got a sick thrill out of making good guys do bad things. She said her entire goal in life was forcing loyal boyfriends to cheat on their partners. The sheer malice in her texts was terrifying. Realizing she was completely unhinged, I quickly slammed the block button on everything. I remember sitting there in absolute silence for a couple of minutes, just processing the adrenaline. It was a massive wake-up call for me. I realized right then that this psychological violation is probably exactly what women experience with creepy dudes on the internet, just on a much more frequent basis. It was a sobering realization that women can also be completely twisted, dangerous weirdos. It was something I had never even considered before that night. Cultural note: during the early 2010s, the combination of anonymous chat platforms like Omegle and microblogging sites like Tumblr created a specific subculture of digital stalking and targeted harassment. Anonymous users frequently use text-based deception to gain a target's trust before rapidly escalating into aggressive, unconsented exposure, a psychological tactic often utilized by predatory individuals to bypass standard social boundaries. Well, it looks like it is time to open up an old, painful can of trauma. My very first serious girlfriend completely destroyed my perception of safety. She forced me into physical intimacy several times a day. If I ever said no, if I was tired, or if I just wasn't in the mood, she would completely lose her mind. She would violently attack me, leaving my torso covered in painful black and blue bruises. I was studying in college at the time. If I didn't rush straight to her apartment right after my classes, she would instantly snap. If I stayed behind to study or clear my head, she would accuse me of cheating with other women. This toxic nightmare went on for months. I was trapped. I finally found the courage to break up with her, but only after she physically pushed me down a flight of stairs. Immediately after the breakup, she executed a calculated smear campaign. She told all our mutual friends and acquaintances that I was the horrible one, and that she was the one who left me. A couple of months later, I ran into her at a party. I was a bit drunk, and she pulled me into a quiet corner. I was stupid enough to think she wanted to apologize. Instead, she suddenly forced a kiss on me. I immediately pushed her away and walked out of the venue. A few days later, my entire world collapsed. I found out she told everyone that I had forced myself on her in that corner. Because I am a very tall guy, a bit gruff, and somewhat unsociable, everyone instantly painted me as the monster. She, on the other hand, was short, outgoing, and everyone thought she was as sweet as can be. They believed her without a single shred of evidence. I never even got the chance to voice my side of the story. I received terrifying threats on my phone. People threw objects at me in the streets. I was publicly attacked and labeled as an abuser. The pressure was so suffocating that I had to abandon the area completely. I packed my entire life, transferred colleges, and forced myself to start over from scratch. To add to the betrayal, I found out years later that she actually married the guy who used to be my best friend back then. I had to go through years of intense therapy. I spent a massive portion of my youth terrified of women. Even today, I still flinch away if my closest friends try to give me a friendly hug. I am absolutely terrified of any intimacy because my brain still associates it with physical violence. I am doing a lot better now, but meeting new people still terrifies me. The fear that someone might weaponize an accusation to destroy my life again is always lingering in the back of my mind. I am 27 now, and I am finally trying to date again. But to be completely honest, I am absolutely terrified. Cultural note: in psychological studies regarding domestic abuse, tall or physically imposing men who experience intimate partner violence, IPV face extreme social barriers when seeking help. Due to deeply ingrained gender stereotypes and cognitive biases, society frequently misinterprets the victim as the aggressor based purely on physical appearance, making them highly vulnerable to social isolation, legal jeopardy, and severe long-term post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). I was sitting with a casual acquaintance from high school at the very back of a massive wide-arch lecture hall table setup for a college class we happened to share. Over the course of the first 3 weeks, this one quiet girl started sitting closer and closer to us. By the 1-month mark, she was always sitting directly in front of us. She actively made herself a permanent part of our group for every single class project. This was way back when the mobile game Words with Friends was an absolute obsession. I was playing upwards of 25 matches at the exact same time, and I noticed she played it too. One day, before the professor started her lecture, I caught her eye. I asked her what her username was so we could play a match. We ended up playing repeatedly for almost the entire day, constantly texting each other through the app's private chat. A couple of days later, I finally asked for her actual phone number. The texts flowed endlessly. Ever since I met her, I felt she was out of my league, but I always had this nagging, instinctive feeling to just ask her out, especially after we talked so much in class and texted late into the night. Yet, I hesitated. I never made a definitive move. All classes at our school were just 1 semester long. At this point, we were exactly 8 weeks away from final exams. Out of nowhere, she sends me a text on a day we didn't have class, asking if I wanted to hang out sometime. My heart raced. I had just been talking to my core group of friends, and we were all planning to see a movie that exact night with their girlfriends. So I messaged her back saying, "Absolutely, I would love to. I actually have plans with a few friends and their girlfriends to see a movie tonight. Would you like to come with me as my date?" She never replied. The silence was instant. She immediately went completely away from keyboard in both of our ongoing mobile games. The following week, her seat in class was completely empty. She never showed up for our lecture for the rest of the entire semester. I never even saw her walking on campus once. It was like she evaporated into thin air. Nothing. A few years later, I was telling someone this bizarre story and decided to look her up on Facebook. There she was. She was married with a kid, so I guess she didn't get kidnapped or die. She just deleted her entire academic life to avoid my text. I went to reminisce about this with that high school acquaintance, who would eventually become a truly great friend. I couldn't get a hold of him. I checked his Facebook page, and my stomach dropped. He had tragically passed away a few months prior. Rest in peace, Aaron. You were the best accidental wingman to the biggest ghosting nuke ever suffered by a human being. We were never incredibly close, but I still think about him often. That motherfucker busted out laughing every single time the professor started her roll call. Everyone needs an Aaron in their life. Cultural note. In modern psychology, radical ghosting is frequently an involuntary coping mechanism triggered by intense social stress and an inability to manage emotional anxiety during a confrontation. However, even when the individual avoids contact strictly to escape their own psychological overwhelm without any conscious intent to cause harm, the toll on the person left behind is severe. Denied any form of basic closure, the victim is forced into a communicative void that the brain interprets as a silent punishment, frequently triggering severe self-blame, situational paranoia, and long-term trust issues. If you like these stories, make sure to subscribe to the Reddit Oracle.